Hey everybody, it's Miss Wisconsin USA 2019, Danika Tramburg, and you're listening to Life After the Crown with Tim Tialdo.
Hey everybody, my name is Tim Tialdo, and welcome to Season 2 of the Life After the Crown podcast. Now, if you haven't had a chance to listen to any of the previous episodes, I do encourage you to go back and listen because there are many valuable interviews that you will definitely gain some wisdom from. Now, for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, welcome and thanks for checking us out. Each episode of Life After the Crown, I interview former pageant contestants, title holders, and women of influence who share advice and stories on how to help you succeed in the world of pageants, but more importantly, how you can flourish in the professional world once your pageant journey comes to an end. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to download this podcast. I do value your time, and I'm glad you're here listening. So let's get started. My guest today has multiple state titles to her name. She was Miss Wisconsin United States 2017. She placed top 10 that year at the national pageant, and just last month gave up her title as Miss Wisconsin USA 2019. She was a college basketball player and has worked at the Super Bowl and engaged in philanthropic initiatives with the National Basketball Wives Association. She has a website called perfectyourpurpose.com with a podcast coming soon. That's exciting. And in terms of purpose, she says hers is to connect with everyone, share life experiences, and empower others. She and I met earlier this year after the Miss USA competition in Reno, Tahoe, and I told her, you know what, when you give up the crown, I'd love to have you on the podcast. So here we are. Danika Tramburg, great to connect, and welcome to Life After the Crown.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was so excited when we had that conversation right after Miss USA, and I can't believe that this is happening. So It's sad that I gave up my title, but I'm excited to be doing this with you.
Well, you're one of the few. So your class is obviously kind of in the process right now of giving up titles as we go through the fall here. I think you were one of the first ones, including Texas. I guess as you've now had maybe a month under your belt to digest the whole year and just what the experience was like, kind of tell everybody about it. I mean, what are you feeling right now?
Yeah, so it has been about a little over a month now, and I really was just kind of, my goal after I gave up my title was to just kind of relax a little bit, spend time with my family, enjoy the little things in life, because for an entire year, I really dedicated my entire life to this Miss Wisconsin title because I wanted to give it my all. I knew it was only 1 year of my life, so I wanted to give everything I had, and that kind of meant putting some family things, some social activities and things like that on the back burner. So my goal kind of right away was just to decompress and enjoy small, regular things for a little while. But now that that's kind of coming to a wrap, I feel like I'm looking for the next thing to do. And that's really just been focusing on my blog, because I started it over a year ago, and I want to expand it. I love writing. I love storytelling, and expand that with a podcast, I think would be the next best thing I could do.
Well, and I love your writing. I was actually on your website today just kind of looking around, and I found an article called A Farewell to Chapter 1, which was obviously talking about kind of graduating from pageants. The first line of the article: if you asked me 3 years ago if I thought I would ever compete at Miss USA, my answer would have been probably not. Why and what changed?
I vividly remember just sitting in our basement with my mom and sisters and watching Miss USA, thinking like, this is so amazing. How neat that these women get this opportunity. But never once did it cross my mind that I would one day have that opportunity. And at the time, I didn't even think about competing in pageants necessarily. I was totally a sports girl my whole life. So that was really my main focus. And then one day my mom was like, why don't you try this pageant? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I love stepping out of my comfort zone and challenging myself. So I just did it. And from there, I have that competitive side to me, just having a sports background. So I competed at Miss Wisconsin USA 3 times. And that third time I won, I was just like beside myself. But every time I came back, I knew I could do better. And that last time, my main goal was winning Miss Wisconsin USA, but I didn't almost realize or resonate right away that meant I was going to go to Miss USA.
Well, I'd love to know what got you into pageants because, as you mentioned, I mean, you're an athlete, you're a jock. You know, you really were big time into sports. You played college basketball, and I've had a lot of girls on who were either former athletes or tomboys or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And I think when they're first approached, I mean, the automatic answer is hell no. I'm an athlete. You know, I'm not a pageant girl. I would love to know kind of where that transition happened for you. Was it something that somebody brought up, or was it just your competitive side?
I think that for me, it was the opportunity to do something different. I just feel like people aren't just athletes, or people aren't just whatever title they are. I feel like there's so much more to a person, and I'm always up for, breaking stereotypes and kind of trying to reach to the next level. And so for me, I think it was just to almost prove that I'm super multifaceted and I could do anything that I really put my mind to.
Were you concerned that your fellow athletes would look at you in a different way if you did a pageant?
So it's funny, they always looked at me differently because I would do modeling as well growing up. And even my college coach, she would like, just don't hit Danika in the face. Like anytime during practice when we're passing the ball around or stuff. So, I mean, they had totally embraced that I could get rough on the court and I could also dress up and walk down the runway. So they totally embraced who I was and everything I did. And, sometimes they would poke fun at me for it, but it was all in good heart.
So you've held a couple of state titles, as we mentioned at the beginning. You competed in both the United States and USA systems. Now that you have given up your Wisconsin title for USA, are you done? Do you feel like this is it for pageants, or do you see more ahead?
I feel like my side, I'm done competing, but I would really love to, after going through the experience and, winning 2 titles and just kind of transitioning and learning what it's all about, I would love to now take my experience and help young women who are looking to do it, just kind of help them hone their skills and learn who they are. I gained so much self-awareness and self-confidence through competing, and I know that I could share my experiences to help other young women also gain self-awareness and boost their self-esteem. And I think that's one of the greatest parts about pageants. And that's kind of where I see my fit now, is I had my time, I did it, I experienced it, it was amazing. But now how can I use that experience in my life to like help someone else?
So would you consider it more like personal coaching or pageant coaching?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed the psychology of things as well. And so I've been looking into getting my life coach certification coming up, and it's something that I can do online while I maintain my full-time job as well. And I think that would really help benefit, almost like personal branding, and just helping women come into their own skin, know who they are, be comfortable with themselves, dig deep and find their story, what made them who they are. And I think that I see myself kind of on that side of things. So
looking back over 2 titles and a few years of competing, I find that a lot of women, when they graduate from pageantry, really ask themselves two things at the end of the day. Number 1, was I enough? And number 2, was it worth it? How would you answer those 2 questions?
Those are great questions. And I feel like I have, in a roundabout way, thought about those things very deeply. Was I enough? I was enough because that's who I was at the time. I gave it all I could. And, 10 years ago, I wasn't who I was when I competed. And 10 years from now, I'm not going to be who I was when I competed. But at that time, it's exactly who I was. I gave it my all. And, it just wasn't in my journey to maybe win Miss USA or advance in that way. But I look back and there's only going to be one winner. So what are you going to take from that experience? I have 50 new friends across the entire country. I gained so much confidence. I competed at Miss USA. That's crazy. I met so many people. So do I think I was enough? Yes, I do. Because I gave it my all. I put myself out there. Was it worth it? Yes, it was totally worth it. I mean, I can't imagine my life without pageants now that I think about it, which is funny because before I couldn't imagine my life with pageants. But it just it's brought me out of my shell. I used to be super quiet and a little bit more introverted, and I've really kind of grown to expand my communication skills and just the people I've met, the places that it's taken me, how involved it's made me get in my community. I'm so grateful kind of for my pageant experiences. Well,
and I think a lot of people who are on the outside of pageants looking in, some that either think, why would I compete in it, or should I? I don't know. I think they look at it and they would hear you say those things and say, oh, but that's just fake, or it's a facade, or they're just doing that because it's part of the pageant competition. Your answer to that?
Yeah. So I guess when I first competed, I didn't really know why I was competing. I just thought it would be cool to do. And then once I really had the entire experience of the weekend, it's an entire journey. It's a process. That's why you see girls competing for so long, because it's not just that one night that you're competing and being judged. It could be an entire year. It could be 5 years where you're completely gaining, you're being more comfortable in your own skin. You're finding out who you are. You're realizing why you want to do what you came there for. And for me, a lot of it was, I have a very strong faith, and I really wanted to just be a light for people and show people that you can do anything you set your mind to. I came from, a sports background, but I could do this too. So to just not, especially as a young woman, not set limitations on any possibility in life, because you're the only one that can set those limitations and you're the only one that can surpass them. So it was just more than, competing for me.
I've found that faith is such a big part of the pageant world. Of course, you don't hear about it really talked about in the press or anything like that, but I know you've experienced it firsthand with a lot of the other girls backstage, just during competition. Yeah. Talk about how you were able to grow and share your faith during your reign.
Yeah, I think especially at Miss USA, coming in there, everyone's beautiful. One girl is more beautiful than the next, and that can get really intimidating sometimes. But the one great thing that I found through my entire 2 weeks in Reno was that we would have prayer groups. We would pray all together as a group before we went out on stage. And I feel like it was the strong faith of these women. They were so secure in who they are that they don't judge you. They support you and they want to see you succeed. And I think that has so much to do with having a strong faith and knowing who you are and whose you are. And we're all sisters in Christ, and that's kind of how we treated each other the 2 weeks we were there. And even throughout my reign as a whole, I think there's so many times where you could be doing some glamorous things and it could get to your head really easily. And I think you just have to sit down and realize, why are you doing this? It's just so much greater than yourself, and it's so much greater than, those fancy moments. It's how do you represent God's light through you? Because you have this incredible platform to, be a woman of God, be graceful, show God's love to literally everyone. And I think that's kind of what I wanted to do. And I hope I did that. I feel like I did. But it made me also very comfortable with talking openly about my faith to anyone I met.
Where do you think your faith comes from? Was it just a upbringing by your parents? Was there a moment that you found Christ? What was it for you?
I was very fortunate. I grew up in a faith-based family. I went to private school my whole life, so I was always surrounded by it. But just because you're surrounded by it doesn't mean that you really believe it or you're living it out. And I think that I went to college and I still kept my faith, but I wasn't practiced as much. And then I just had a moment where I was getting ready to graduate soon, and I was like, what am I doing? What is my purpose? Why? What is my next step? And I think the pageantry aspect had a lot to do with kind of bringing me back to my center stone. What is it that I'm trying to accomplish? And if you live your life about you and what you want and where you see yourself, it becomes so overwhelming and it's way too much to bear. But when you step back and you say, God, what do you want me to do? What talents, what gifts and abilities did you give me that I can use to best live out my faith, best live out your love through me? And I feel like pageants actually had a huge part in where that my true passion for my faith stemmed from, because I really had to dig deep. And I think a lot of times too, college can be tough for people, just being away from family, and it's the first time on your own, and I don't know, there's just so many distractions, and I totally put it on the back burner. But it was kind of after a few years that I was like, hey, wake up, something, you don't feel right. Why? What's different? And I just wasn't as active in my faith life. And I honestly can thank pageants too for bringing me back to it.
Do you find it challenging to share it publicly, or is it something that you look forward to on a daily basis?
It's a great question. I think that I try really hard to, when I can incorporate it to something, I try to, but I never like to push it on anyone or make it feel that way. So I'm very much so, I love to read people, and I just kind of, if I can, speak something, I love the idea of you have the ability to plant seeds in people, I think. So you don't have to transform someone overnight, or you don't have to at all, but if you share a little bit of that with someone, it doesn't hurt them. It only helps them.
Now, you talked about your mission on your website. It's basically to help others discover their unique purpose through recognizing their gifts and talents. I know you mentioned a little bit of personal branding earlier. How do you plan on going about that? Is it through a podcast? Is it through writing, videos, conversations? I mean, how do you feel like you can do that?
I kind of feel like it's going to be an ongoing process. I still feel like I'm trying to figure out, what is my unique purpose. I think it kind of changes also with, the seasons of life that you go through. So right now I'm doing what I can in ways that I think that I can impact people. And, it started through writing, and I could only just hope that people read some of it and, felt comfort in my words or could relate. And then podcasts have become such a great thing to utilize as well. And I know now so many women that have incredible stories to share that I hope that I can connect with people with that way. And I think it's just a mixture of things. I think it's living your life on a daily basis, out of love, out of genuineness, listening to people when they need an ear to listen to. And I think it just starts from the little things too. So some days it's frustrating because I think maybe I'm not making a huge difference. I have to realize that I'm doing what I can now, and, who knows what the future has to hold.
Well, look, I think you're doing a lot of difference making, and I would definitely say that. I mean, I've just seen you out and about, and certainly on social media, and I think you're doing a great thing. So don't ever think that you're not.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
I got to ask this because as I run into more and more title holders year by year, what I find with a lot of them is that there is usually a significant event that happened in their life that makes them want to give or achieve or do something great. Mm-hmm. Did you have something like that in your life that really kind of, from that point on, set the stage for, okay, I'm going to be different than everybody else. This is what I'm going to go for, and this is why.
Yeah, and that was a huge thing when it came to kind of figuring out, a lot of times women have some sort of cause that they're, super into and passionate about and working for in their community. And for the longest time, I really struggled with, what's personal to me. And I still kind of struggle with it, but it took a long time to get it out of me. And I think that growing up, my freshman year of high school, I was a 3-sport varsity athlete. I was a good student. I worked really hard. And I had a lot of jealousy towards, my accomplishments and achievements in life. Mm-hmm. And it was so hard for me to understand because I always had a heart where I wanted to see people do well. And I would have supported absolutely anyone that I was a friend with, anyone that I wasn't. I wanted to see people, achieve great things and, push themselves. So for me, it was super hard growing up. I had a lot of negative stereotypes based on, how I look, my accomplishments and simple things like that, I didn't have many friends in high school. I talked to one girl that I actually went to high school with still. And even it went into college, I have a couple girlfriends, but, that was something that was always really hard for me. And I'm a pretty strong person. So at the time, I would kind of just brush it off and get over it. But I think that's also probably what pushed me so hard into doing something impactful and good with my life, is because I wanted to show people that it doesn't matter what you say, knock me down 100,000 times and I'll just get back up and, keep pushing and keep doing what I want to do and know that I can and am incapable of doing. So that was one thing that, it still follows me to this day sometimes. I just wish people would be more accepting and encouraging and supportive of other women. And I really appreciate all the women that I've met competing because they are strong, confident, supportive women. Absolutely.
And when you were in athletics, were you the star athlete in high school? I mean, it sounds like you were a pretty good athlete.
Yeah, I was super fortunate. I don't know where it came from. I mean, I haven't seen my mom or dad play sports recently, but I did. I worked really hard. I was super passionate about sports and competitive, and I was just had natural talent as an athlete. And so, I had natural talent and drive and ambition, and so it pushed me that much harder. And I was at a small school as well, so it kind of made me stand out next to people.
Do you feel like when you're a star athlete like that, and we'll just take athletics as an example here, that your commitment and drive to want to succeed and achieve at such a high level tends to take away from other parts of your life, like, for instance, your social life and your friendships?
Yeah, I definitely could. I was I always wanted to put myself in a position where I knew that I was bettering my future. So, yeah, when you're going to school, especially as a high schooler, you're getting there. We started at 7:45. You're at school all day, and then you have either a practice or a game at night, and then you come home and do your homework. Repeat for 5 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
and then on the weekends with games. So yeah, that was my focus, and I don't regret that at all. I think that it made me who I am today, and it made me the hardworking, driven person that I am. I learned so much: time management, teamwork, honestly, just so many things from athletics that I would never change that. But yeah, you totally put things on the back burner sometimes. They're just, you don't have time to do everything. So yeah, maybe you aren't cultivating those friendships as much. But for me, even in college, it was something that I wanted to do. And I put myself through, I think I had 4 internships in school as well,
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to make sure that I was setting myself up for success. So sometimes at the time, it wasn't always what I wanted to do, but I knew that it was going to benefit me in the future.
Now, obviously, pageants have been a little bit of a game changer for you. I mean, some of the things that you're talking about doing here in the future obviously revolve around the pageant world. What was it that you were studying in college that you hoped to do one day, or at least thought at that time you would be doing?
I always had a passion for broadcasting, so I always saw myself as a sideline reporter, and it's something that I still enjoy, just because I think about where sports have gotten me. And then I went to school for sport and entertainment business and got a Bachelor of Science in that. I worked for our sports information department at the school that I went to. And now working where I do, I also have the opportunity to do some digital reporting for a baseball team. So I'm doing that as well. But I think about how I want a family someday, and that lifestyle is not always conducive to that. So it is something that I'm still passionate about, but I think there's so many other avenues I also want to explore. Sometimes I just have too many ideas. I can't keep myself reined in, but I'm really excited to kind of explore the life coaching side of things too. And I think a lot of these things can be done simultaneously. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, definitely. I jumped into another article on your website.
Yeah.
And it had a story in it that was pretty incredible. And I'd like to read that story and then just kind of let you expand on it, if you would. Do you mind?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right, November 8th, 2018, 5 p.m. I was on my way to climb the stairs of the U.S. Bank building in downtown Milwaukee for cystic fibrosis. Then at 5:10 p.m., my plans changed. I saw my life flash before my eyes, literally. In the middle lane on Highway 41 heading southbound, I looked up in my rearview mirror to see a vehicle quickly approaching me at 45 to 50 miles an hour as I was nearly at a complete stop in rush hour traffic. I glanced to my left, but I couldn't see completely in the lane next to me, and all I knew was that I didn't want the person in front of me to also be a victim as to what was about to happen. As I turned my wheel slightly to the left, I found myself propelled across the next lane of traffic, every airbag deploying from my steering wheel to my sides to my shins and knees, because I was just rear-ended. No longer in control of the trajectory of my vehicle and crashing into the cement median, impacting the front driver's side of my car. My car, which I only had for 5 months, was now half the size it used to be. After sheer panic and shock, I realized somehow, some way, a guardian angel had been there with their hand on me, because I was okay. Once one of the kind witnesses was able to pry my passenger door open, I crawled out and realized the other driver had fled the scene. That must have been traumatic, and I would think a little bit life-changing as well, because I've been in an accident like that. I've been in a head-on collision, so I know the feeling of your life flashing before your eyes. How did that impact you?
It was absolutely petrifying. It's coming up on almost a year. So it was last year around this time when I had just won Miss Wisconsin USA, so I was coming off a high of my life. And then, and all this stuff is happening. Because you can tell, I just wanted to get the ball rolling. So I was scheduling appearances and, going nonstop. And then I got in this accident and, I was frustrated because just the sheer inconvenience of all of it. It was such a dumb mistake on that driver's part. He could have killed me. It was so irresponsible, and that really, made me mad. And then it was completely putting a halt in my life for an entire month when I didn't have a vehicle. I couldn't make appearances. I was just totally put on pause for a moment. And it was right around, Thanksgiving was coming up. So it was just a crazy time. And knowing that someone could hit you and just leave, and having no respect or care for, another human being. I could have been dead. I'm just so grateful that it wasn't, a family with young kids and someone did die or, got extremely hurt. I ended up coming out, I don't know how, with an extremely bad concussion, and that was it. So I absolutely believe that, a guardian angel was watching over me. And I take, as scary as it was, I still, to this day, have like PTSD driving. I'm always looking at my mirrors. It completely changed my life. But, I'm just so grateful, I guess, coming out of it how I did. And, as someone who also had 4 OWIs under his belt, it's just frustrating in the state of Wisconsin. It makes you think of all these things. Like, it made me super passionate about, our drunk driving laws in this state. How can we fix that? That's happening way too often. So it just kind of opened my eyes to so many things, but it also made me realize that sometimes maybe I'm going, 110 miles per hour and I just need to stop. I need to pause. I need to let God be in control of my life and not always think that I'm in control of my life. So, it made me think about so many different things, and I'm just grateful to be where I am now and, that I came out of it. And I hope that the driver also, learned something from that experience. I don't wish ill upon him at all. I just hope that, he never does that again. So.
What's the old Carrie Underwood song, Jesus Take the Wheel?
Oh my gosh, it couldn't have been more true. I remember it completely. After I got rear-ended, my back trunk was all the way up to my back seat. And then I was in a Jeep Cherokee. And then my front side, hitting the concrete median was probably the scariest part because I was going directly at it. And it was on my driver's side. So that was so petrifying. I didn't even know what to think. I blacked out after that.
Well, I remember going, through that type of situation. I remember just waking up the next day. It was just a whole new perspective. I mean, you literally wake up and think, I'm alive, and that's a gift, and I don't think most people think that way when they wake up every day.
No, and you don't. And it's that simple stuff too. It makes you wake up and say, instead of, I have to do this today, it's like, well, I'm so fortunate I'm able to, get in my car today, drive to work, whatever it might be that you're doing, just it totally can put a new perspective on life. And I'm definitely a glass half full kind of person.
Well, very good. Well, I'm glad you're okay, and that's pretty amazing that all you had was a concussion. I'm sure you felt thankful for that.
Totally.
Well, let's switch gears here a little bit. So I know you've been listening to the podcast in the past, and a lot of the discussions I guess over the past couple of months have certainly been about the organization's pageantry in general and kind of what's going on there. I know you wrote an article about, I think it was a quote that recently caught a lot of people off guard from the Miss America organization. It was from a press release that said, an educated woman does not parade around in a swimsuit. Now, in total transparency, it wasn't actually MAO that said that. It was a donor talking about, her parents and why they wouldn't let her compete when she was little. But at the end of the day, that narrative is out there that, there is this modern day woman who shouldn't be parading around in a swimsuit. And I know you kind of wrote the article on it from the perspective of a lot of your fellow title holders that competed at Miss USA with you. I guess just talk about your viewpoint on pageantry right now, obviously, since you are the most recent competitor at a national competition.
Yeah, and, it wasn't even, one person saying that, double the amount of people are thinking it. So it's just that stereotype that I think we still continue to have to break. And I know that there's these women out there that I competed with that are beautiful, so smart. I mean, you look at Chesley, what she's been doing with her title as Miss USA right now. They're just so much more multifaceted than, parading around in a swimsuit. I don't think that accurately depicts anyone that has competed in a pageant before. So it's frustrating. And I also believe that it's okay. We embrace our femininity. I think it's so important that we see, the differences between a man and a woman, because we're not made to be equal. We are made to complement each other. And I think, we're always trying to obviously strive for equality in some aspect, but, what a man isn't good at, a woman is, and what a woman's good at, a man is. And I think that's why we complement each other so well. And I am all about embracing the feminine side, embracing our femininity and, being able to go out there confidently. We're confident in our own skin, and we work really hard to live a healthy lifestyle. And so, I think that sometimes we strive so hard to be everything that a man is sometimes, the CEO of a company, all this stuff. And not to say that we can be all of those things. But I think that, sometimes it's looked at, well, if you're in a swimsuit, you can't be a CEO, or if you're that, you can't wear a swimsuit. But it's like that stuff goes together. That stuff intertwines. It's not one or the other. It's both. And I think that we can be feminine and we can be smart. We can be emotional and we can be strong. And I think that's the beautiful part of it. It's not that we're trying to be, one thing or the other. We're showing that these things can coexist with each other. We're showing that brains and beauty can be simultaneous.
Well, and I think, part of the conversation that's always I guess we'll call it implied in comments, but it's never really brought to the forefront, is that when you get in a swimsuit as Miss Wisconsin USA and you step out on a national stage on Fox and here you come down the runway, some people look at it and say, she's a sex object. What did you look at it as?
I felt like I've never worked so hard to be in as good of shape as I was in. I'm not quite in that good shape anymore, but I'm still in shape. I like to work out and eat healthy and live a healthy lifestyle, but that was like, I was working out 2 times a day, I was really, trying to be the best I could be. And I looked at it as like showing off my accomplishments. Like, that's awesome. You know how much dedication it takes for women to, be in the best shape that they could be in? That's not easy. You're saying no to so many things. You're really disciplining yourself. And for me, it was like empowering. I was super excited to go out on stage and show everything that I worked for. And I just think it's a really, I don't know, you can't even explain it. It's just such an empowering feeling, especially when you think that, like, I never imagined that I'd be able to do that. And I also at one point was never comfortable or confident enough in my own skin to be able to do that. So I really think it's just such a confidence builder, and it's a very empowering moment.
So when you decided to compete in pageants, I think everybody in their own mind has an ideal of what they want to be or somebody that they're pursuing in the way that they looked on a stage or something like that. Mm-hmm. Did you have an ideal, either person inspired you in that way or even just a generation that inspired you?
Yeah. I actually I loved Olivia Copo. I don't know what it was, but she had always been someone that I just, thought was so regal looking on stage, just her presence. And I also had watched so many interviews of hers where she was just so matter of fact and confident and just knew who she was. And she didn't let anyone, she didn't take shit from anybody. And so she was always someone that I just looked up to. Obviously, she's stunning, and we're very different physically. She's very short. I'm tall, like, other things too. But so it wasn't necessarily like her body image or anything, but it was like who she was and how she portrayed herself. And I think that's kind of like the biggest part of it. And we always talk about how we shouldn't compare each other and how everyone's so different and unique, which is so true. But it is like, it's nice to have someone to look up to. And I really respected who she was. It's not that I wanted to be her copycat or anything, but I loved her whole aura and presence about her.
So as you look at pageantry now, you just competed in the national competition. Are you happy with where pageantry is, where it's going? What do you see in the future? I mean, is it what you would like, or are there adjustments that you think need to be made?
Yeah, I think that it's different than what it used to be. Obviously, you think of when it originated, it was extremely focused on beauty. I think a lot of what pageants are now are really focused on resumes, which is phenomenal. But I think that we almost have to sometimes take a step back and look at, okay, do we still call it a beauty pageant? Like, what is it? Or is it more, I just think sometimes there's a gray area, because you look at where it stemmed from and then kind of what it's turned into now is more resume and your accomplishments and your achievements and all that you've done versus necessarily facial beauty or like outward beauty. Which I think is super important, because I think you should probably, you should definitely look at someone from the inside versus the outside. But at the same time, that's kind of where pageants came from. So I don't know. I do think it's changed. I don't really know where it's going to be. I think it's always evolving. But I almost wonder if we should take a look back at, what was the origin of, pageant? What did we mean when we said that word or gave it that name? Because I think it's changed so much. So I don't know. I don't really know if I feel one way or the other about it. I just think it's different than when it used to be. But it's been good for everyone.
Well, and, I think what you brought up a little bit there was a discussion that I also had last week with Mackenzie Freed, who competed in the Miss America pageant last year, is that I think both organizations the one thing that they really could do that would kind of solidify things for everybody a little bit and kind of shut up this whole conversation that we're having is just define what is Miss America, what is Miss USA, what is Miss Universe, etc., and just put it in a paragraph or, define that model, because I think that's where a lot of people struggle is I don't know what I'm competing for. I don't know what I'm supposed to be in order to be X, Y, or Z. And I think that's where I think some of the frustration seems to be coming out all over the place.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of see too. We know it for what it was. What is it now? I think it's changing, but we don't always know what direction it's changing. And so it's really hard for girls that do compete, because that's why I always think you just have to, be yourself and be the best you can be, because sometimes they just have their own idea in mind and you just might not be it that year. And that's okay. You still have to give it your all, but I totally agree. It's, going back to, what is it? What do you want your organization to portray? What do you want women to get from this experience? What do you want to be seen as? So I think we're going to see a lot more changes in the coming years. And, I'm really just kind of excited to see where it goes.
You and me both.
Yeah. But, obviously a little disappointed in how some things have been, especially with Miss America and getting rid of, the portions of competition that they have. And, it is what it is. And unfortunately, I don't know if that was the best move for them, but we'll see where it takes them. And I don't know.
Yeah, I totally get it. Well, thanks for commenting on that a little bit. I did want to talk about something else that during your pageant year I know was something that was special to you, and that is volunteerism. Now, there was one area that you had mentioned was really a part of your passion, and that is human trafficking. Why is that?
So that really stemmed from back in 2017 when I was able to travel to Los Angeles, and I worked with the National Basketball Wives Association. During my time there, we spent an entire weekend basically doing this philanthropic initiative where we visited a safe house. And while I was there, we were able to put together these bags for survivors. We heard from them all of their personal stories. We saw actually operations happening, sting operations while we were there. And that was something that, you just kind of can't erase out of your head. And then from there, there's stories about, this woman who was sold when she was 5 years old from her mom. And it's just stuff like that. It really touched me. I just couldn't even fathom how someone could do that. And so that's when I came back to Wisconsin, found an organization in my county, actually, and I started bringing awareness. And I live in a very rural community, and for the longest time, I thought this was only happening in big cities. Well, it's not. It's happening in our own backyards. And that's when I knew I needed to start raising awareness for this cause.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. And I can imagine the impact that had on you when you saw it in person like that.
It's honestly indescribable, hearing that stuff and then it's actually happening in your own country.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and thank you for just kind of talking all about your pageant journey here. It's been a fascinating conversation. Before we wrap up, I'd like to do the rapid-fire get-to-know Danika questions. Can we do that now?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go. 10 of them. These should be interesting here. All right, here we go. Number 1. What's something that I would never guess about you?
Oh my gosh. I feel like there's so many things, probably.
You can just pick one.
I can touch my tongue to my nose. How's that?
I wouldn't have guessed that. You're right.
See?
Number 2, actually, this is kind of in the same category. What's your most unusual talent? So maybe it's that, or maybe it's something else.
Oh. I used to love to sing when I was little, opera sing. And I have no experience, or no one in my family who's ever done that. And so I don't do it anymore. But when I was young, I would literally go around the house thinking I could sing opera. And I'm sure my poor parents, it probably made their ears hurt so bad.
Number 3, what's the funniest thing you've ever seen a child do?
So they're always doing something interesting. And it's mostly what they say, and it's probably super inappropriate, but I had one of my nephews quote extremely bad words from The Hangover when it first came out, and that was probably one of the funniest things I ever heard.
From The Hangover?
Yeah, he was like, there's a sleep tiger in the bathroom. And I was like, oh my gosh. And he was 2 years old. He I told my sister, and I was like, you cannot let these kids be seeing you guys watch this show. They're just complete sponges.
All right, number 4. What's something that people think makes them look cool, but actually makes them look ridiculous?
Oh my gosh, this is a great one, and I have the perfect answer. Those white sneakers that everyone wears, they're like giant dinosaur clappers. Like, they're so atrocious looking, and every young girl wears them with like shorts, and I just don't get it.
Is it the high top ones? Is that the ones you're talking about?
No, they look like your grandpa's New Balance Velcro white tennis shoes.
I know exactly.
They're so bad.
The ones that are like $10 at the store.
Yeah, and everyone wears them. Like, just because it's all of a sudden a trendy thing doesn't mean it's okay.
All right, number 5. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
I would say no, it's just a hot dog. I don't know what category that is, but I wouldn't call it a sandwich.
Got it. Number 6, what's your spirit animal?
Oh, an elephant. I just love them. I think they're so majestic. My favorite part is that, how long that they carry their young, and then that when one of them passes away, they literally mourn. So they have all of these emotions. And I also read one time that elephants react to humans the same way that like a dog reacts to you when you walk in or something. So I just think it's pretty neat.
Interesting. Number 7, would you rather trade intelligence for looks or looks for intelligence?
I think that I would probably trade looks for intelligence. I think that can probably get you a lot further in life. Yeah, that's probably what I'd go with.
Number 8, would you rather be the best player on a horrible team or the worst player on a great team?
Oh, probably the best player on a horrible team. I just would not want to be bad at anything. Really. I'm not gonna lie.
I love it. All right, number 9. How much would someone have to pay you to eat a live spider?
Oh, God. Well, I'm still trying to pay off my student loan, so it probably wouldn't be astronomical, but I guess I'd probably say, like, at least $15,000.
$15,000. That's your number. All right, 15 grand. Number 10. You ready for this?
Yeah.
What's the worst pickup line a guy has ever used on you?
Oh my gosh. I just think guys in general these days are like, I don't know. They just slide into their DMs and they're like, hey, what's up? And I just want to be like, who are you? Like, that's so strange. Pickup lines though? Gosh, I wish I had a good one to tell you.
Well, even if it's on social media, it doesn't have to be like in a bar or anything.
Oh, okay. Are those space pants you're wearing? Because your ass is out of this world.
Where do people come up with these? I
don't know. I'm embarrassed for them when they say it out loud.
How did you respond?
I'm not a woman of many words. I'm a woman of many looks. So I think I just gave them a look and walked away.
All right, you're off the hook. Very good. So, really tell us here before we go here, what's on tap for 2020 for Danika?
I have a family vacation coming up, and I'm so excited to spend time away from just, the daily hustle and bustle of life with them. Other than that, I'm really excited to, hopefully further my education in life coaching and brand building and start this podcast and really get my blog out there. And I feel like every day I'm kind of continuously trying to grow in my skills and abilities and learn how to build my personal brand. And there's just not anything out there that's like, hey, this is what you do. So every day I'm just trying something new and, hopefully that'll catch on sometime.
Well, I want to wish you the best of luck. And if you ever need help with the podcast stuff, certainly reach out to me. I kept a lot of notes on how I created this one, so I might be able to help you there.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I'm sure I'll see you around here, so just keep in touch with me. But thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yes, I absolutely hope so. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to today's episode, everybody, and to Danika Tramburg for her time. Now, if you want to follow Danika on social media, you can check out her Instagram at Danika Tramburg, or you can check out her website that we talked about, perfectyourpurpose.com. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you wouldn't mind, please subscribe. You can do so on Spotify, iTunes, the podcast app, Google Play, and YouTube, or you can just go to lifeafterthecrown.com. And for weekly podcast updates, just follow me on Instagram @TimTialdo. Until next time, remember the words of 1 Corinthians 3, verses 18 and 19. Stop deceiving yourselves. If you think you are wise by this world's standards, you need to become a fool to truly be wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness to God. As the scriptures say, He traps the wise in the snare of their own cleverness. Talk to you next week, everybody.